just keep listening to yourself. I mean, like I said, there's always going to be that person talking in your ear and trying to tell you different things. And I was also within the last 6 months diagnosed with MBL, which is a form of leukemia, the beginning stages of leukemia. And when I found that out, I automatically always go into this mode of, okay, food can fix this. What can I do to fix what I'm doing now to try and stop this, cancer from growing and continuing on and reaching full stages of leukemia?
Okay, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday morning. Hope everybody's doing well. We have a special guest today. We have Nicole. I believe Dryly. I may be butchering the name, but hopefully we're getting it right. Nicole, give me a second. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself, and so we can get started here. So you should be able to unmute yourself. There we go. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm actually a lot of breath. I got to do a bunch of sprints on a bike here for a few minutes ago, so I'm still catching up from that. But ready to go nonetheless. Nicole, where are you located?
Fargo, North Dakota.
Fargo, North Dakota. There was a movie about that, as I recall. You're staying away from wood chippers, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was a Coen Brothers movie. I had a invitation to go to North Dakota when I was in the Air Force in the military, going to, I think it was Grand Forks at the time, but I politely declined and decided I was going to go back to medical school instead. So anyway, Nicole, you've got an interesting background story. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a new Revero carnivore coach.
Okay.
Just got my certificate in February. Very
good.
I have been doing carnivore since July 1st was my official start date, 2019.
So you're almost a year. Yeah, getting up on a year here. A few more weeks. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And it's been real good to me.
What prompted you to do that? I mean, not everybody is. It's still pretty unusual, even in 2022, despite the fact that it continues to grow in popularity. It's still considered sort of out there a little bit. What prompted you to go down that route?
I was in that, group of people who thought carnivore was very extreme, like up there with veganism. Mm-hmm. And I had been doing paleo for several years before that, and I was actually getting a health coaching certificate for a popular paleo diet. And another one of those coaches was carnivore. And he kept telling me, you need to go carnivore, because I was having reoccurring infections. I was breastfeeding at the time, a 27-month-old, and my milk supply was starting to get low. I was having mastitis all the time, recurring urinary tract infections, skin infections. And so I felt like paleo, and I was also doing keto at the time, just weren't really helping me anymore. So I kind of just dipped my toes in one day and increased the amount of meat that I ate and kind of reduced the amount of vegetables. And like, even just that one day, my milk production started to increase again. And I could see some improvement in like my skin infections that I was having. So that was like a week before July 1st. So like July 1st, I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in on July 1st.
Yeah, interesting. So, and that's not, we don't typically hear about, mastitis and, UTI. Well, it's not that I haven't heard of those things, but that's not often the case why people go on a carnivore diet. And it's interesting to think that perhaps there's some benefit to the immune system, which would certainly be plausible. And I think there's actually pretty good evidence some of the compounds in meat do support the immune system. So, so you went in July. So how was the transition difficult, easy for you? How did you go? What happened to you?
That transition was actually very, very easy for me because I started feeling so well right away. Like my first week was I was feeling great. I had so much more energy, and still seeing more improvement in my skin infections. In September, though, like a few months after I started, my body, what I think, did like an oxalate dump. I have a previous history of getting kidney stones frequently. And even on paleo, I hadn't had any kidney stones, but the kidney stone that tried to exit was very large. The doctor said I had been growing it for several years, most likely. So that to me shows that on the paleo diet, I was still collecting oxalates and creating stones. That stone got stuck and backed up my left kidney. It, of course, started leaking and had perforations all over, and I ended up getting septic. And, everyone was telling me, don't continue to eat all this meat. Your kidneys are currently in failure mode. They were failing, and they weren't working very well. So they said, if you keep eating meat, keep eating animal products, your kidneys are going to continue to fail and you'll have to be on dialysis. My mother is a urology nurse and she kept saying the same thing. You're going to kill yourself by eating all this meat. I don't want you to keep doing it. But as I lay in my hospital bed, I said to myself, I have a decision to make here. Do I listen to these people and go back to a paleo diet, which in my mind now was what was creating my problems? Or do I listen to myself and continue with my diet? And I made the decision to listen to myself and listen to my body because it was telling me to continue with what I was doing. And so in the hospital, hospital food isn't great. And sometimes it can be hard, but I was able to remain like 100% carnivore. I ate eggs, I ate chicken breasts. They had bone broth. It probably wasn't the best bone broth, but I drank it. I got the kidney stone removed and I had to have surgery to have it removed. And I cleared my infection. It took me like 2 months, which they were pretty surprised about. And my kidney function actually started to get better within that 2 months. So to me, that was just another like solidification that carnivore, doesn't hurt your kidneys, doesn't cause the problems that they say it does.
Yeah, this is an interesting scenario because obviously you got this kidney stone symptoms after going carnivore, and so some people say, well, clearly there's a cause for that. But what you point out, you've got this big kidney stone that's probably maybe breaking up in smaller pieces, and now it's trying to exit. Did they analyze the kidney stone? Did it come back calcium oxalate? So yeah.
Yes, it did. It was a calcium oxalate stone.
Which is about that's about 80% of the kidney stones that are there. It's usually calcium oxalate. So you have, oxalate, obviously you don't get from meat. So if it was a uric acid stone, it might make a little more sense perhaps, but, being calcium oxalate, meat is not going to substantially contribute to that in a significant way. And you're having this mechanical phenomenon. It's a pressure phenomenon. It's not a I'm eating too much meat or protein issue. And so it's kind of interesting to see how that played out for you. And it's probably kind of what I would suspect over time. Now, so they were looking at things like your glomerular filtration rate to assess kidney function. They may have measured it directly. GFR is usually an estimated GFR we typically get. But so have you seen your kidney function go from where it was right when you had the obstruction to now improving?
Yes. So my kidney function was tested kind of on a regular basis because I in the past had reoccurring like kidney infections and kidney stones. So before that kidney stone in mine, my eGFR was like greater than 90. And after that, I went down to like stage, I think it was 3 on their scale. There's like stage 3 and 4. And then I think 5 is when you get dialysis or something like that. But I was pretty close to end stage kidney failure during that stone. And now I am back up to, let's see, the last time I was tested, it was great. Like they said greater than 80 or something like that. So not back to where I was, but I don't expect that because I do have physical damage to my left kidney. But I do think that with time, it could potentially get better. I did recently get upgraded from every 6 months to having to see my nephrologist to a year now.
Yeah, and are they using creatinine to assess your kidney function, EGFR? I mean, it might be better to use a cystatin C, I suspect, but
they test that, but I don't necessarily think that the doctor really looks at that very much. She mostly looks at my EGFR and my electrolytes and how they're doing
this
as
this
my
is this is a nephrologist or the family physician.
nephrologist.
Okay, interesting. Okay. All right, so you recover from the kidney thing. Are you still breastfeeding during this time? Because you're 27 months. That's more. It's fairly long for many women, but it's not nothing. Yeah.
I wanted to go longer than that, but shortly after that kidney stone surgery, they had I was on morphine in the hospital, which I reluctantly took towards the end. But after I got home, I think he got some of that morphine like the first night that I was there. I tried to stop in the hospital a couple days before I was going to leave so that he wouldn't get any, but unfortunately, I think he did get some. So it kind of affected our breastfeeding relationship. I was able to continue on for like another month, but eventually I was just so tired and sick from being septic and on antibiotics and stuff that we kind of said, okay, it's time.
Yeah, that's certainly understandable. I couldn't imagine, trying to do that while you're septic. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. Okay, so you've recovered from that largely. So the mastitis went away. Recurring UTIs, are they going away too?
Yeah, I haven't had a UTI for a really long time. It's been several years since I've had one. I used to get eczema all the time on my elbows. I don't get that anymore. I also was dealing with arthritis like in my early 20s, and I don't have any of that. Like I started doing yoga back in 2019, shortly after I went carnivore. I've lost 20 pounds and still continue to kind of lose weight and, creating muscle and that kind of thing. I'm trying to think of what else. I also have Hashimoto's, and that I haven't really had any symptoms of that since going carnivore either.
Are you taking thyroid replacement for that?
No, so that was the plan. I got diagnosed with that back in 2012, and the plan then was to let it go, come in every 6 months to get a thyroid ultrasound because I had nodules on my thyroid. Check those out, wait till my thyroid dies, remove it, and put me on medicine because at that time my thyroid numbers were still pretty good. They still remain pretty good. I don't have any nodules and I don't experience any of my Hashimoto's symptoms. So I haven't been back to see an endocrinologist. And my primary, she'll check my thyroid every once in a while, but it's always still really good. So I haven't had to do any doctoring for my thyroid.
Yeah, it's good, particularly when I tell you we're just going to wait and adopt the thing out. It just seems like, hey, man, there's got to be a better strategy than that. Just thinking about the diet, how do you implement the diet? What does your diet look like? Carnivore diet means different things for people to some degree.
Right. When I started and my health coach friend, told me about it, and I said to him, like, I don't know what to eat. What do I, eat? Do I just eat meat or what? And his only piece of advice was eat anything that has a face or came from something that had a face. Dairy doesn't bother me. I did paleo autoimmune protocol elimination back several years before I started carnivore, and dairy has never bothered me. So I've always eaten good dairy, grass-fed butter and cheese and things like that. So with that advice, that's what I did. Anything that came from an animal, I would eat it, including dairy and eggs. And I never really had any trouble with it. I found it so much easier to do that. Like going to the grocery store, I always found shopping for vegetables to be stressful because I would purchase them. I didn't really want to eat them. So a lot of times I would end up throwing them away because they would go rotten before I would eat them. And same with fruit, like I would look at all these different kinds of fruit and just think, like, oh, okay, what am I supposed to eat? But like now when I go to the grocery store, I'm like, meat section. That's the only section I go to. And I'm like, yes, that looks good. Let's get some of that, some steaks. Let's get some eggs. Let's get some fish, chicken feet. I like to still make my own homemade bone broth, or meat stock, I call it, I guess, because I put in a whole chicken and some chicken feet and the gizzards and the liver and the neck and all that stuff, and make my own broth, which my kids really love too.
Yeah, it's interesting you point out the fact, and I saw this, and I'm sure most of us seen. We would sort of shell out that extra money, get this big old thing of organic fruits or vegetables, and then not get around to eating it or not feel like eating it because it's not really that good, and particularly the vegetables just don't taste that good, and then you end up throwing them away. And if we look at food production and waste in the U.S. and other places, something like 40% of the food we produce ends up in a landfill, whether at the production side or at the consumer side. And I think these organic fruits just any fruits and vegetables are, as we know, are a significant portion of that. And some of the baked goods out there, they make up the biggest sort of waste that we have. And when we talk about, feeding the planet, let's just stop wasting food or producing food that gets wasted that nobody wants to eat. So that's an interesting point there. Now, as far as, you mentioned you kind of meat, whatever, if it had a face, I'm going to eat it, or, or something, or if it came from something like that. Do you still eat a pretty significant variety of food? Some people get to where they just I just want, beef all the time, or you kind of still have a pretty good variety?
I go through spurts. Sometimes I will get into this mood where I just want to have ruminants, and I'll eat beef and I'll eat lamb. But other times I get into cravings for pig and chicken. I have a smoker. I love to smoke meat, so I always like to smoke some pork butt and make some pulled pork, and or put a chicken on there and smoke that up. And ribs, I really like ribs quite often. So yeah, I just kind of listen to my body and what it craves. And so sometimes that's a variety, and sometimes it's just a steak and ground hamburger that day.
Are you out smoking stuff in the winter out there in North Dakota? That seems like it might be challenging out for January.
We try for as long as we can. We got a special jacket to put on it to keep the heat in, because it does get pretty cold here, and that works. So yeah, we were smoking, let's see, in January, I think we started smoking this year. We just got the jacket this year, so it worked really good. But on days when it's like 30 and 40 below, no, we're not out smoking.
Yeah, that's tough. So what about the rest of the family? Are they supportive, surprised? What are their thoughts around it? Are they participating?
They're pretty supportive and they participate. My kids still like to have some fruit here and there, but they're not big vegetable people. They never were. And so I never pushed that anyway when they were kids. And my husband, he, still eats his standard American stuff. He'll go to the grocery store and get his Little Debbie snack cakes and things like that. But for the most part, when he is here at home, we're making just a meat meal, and we all eat it and all enjoy it. No one fusses. Sometimes the kids will have strawberries when they're in season, or apples. We have an apple tree, so when the apples come in, I'll have an apple maybe with their meat. But for the most part, my husband and my kids are, I would say, 80% carnivore.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think, from a male perspective, I think, when the wife goes on a diet, you sort of passively, kind of secondhand smoke type of thing. You secondhand diet,
Yes.
kind of get the same thing. And I imagine a lot of men, when their wives go vegan, they're like, oh my God. And when they go carnivore, they're probably like thumbs up, Interesting with that. So let me ask you a little bit, because you said you're doing some coaching now. And you said you tend to focus on women. Is that fair to say?
Well, no, I haven't gotten any clients yet, unfortunately. And I don't really have a focus at this point. My coaching philosophy is just to treat anyone who does come to me as the individuals, that they are and help them, be part of their team so that they can reach their goals.
What has been, as far as, we talk about support, and this is where kind of where this community comes in. What sort of things were helpful to you? You said you mentioned you met another coach from another sort of system who recommended carnivore, maybe gave you some assistance. Because this isn't, this isn't the easiest thing for everyone to do. A lot of people, just to change their eating pattern in general to anything, for a lot of people is very challenging because there's just so much things driving you to continue to eat the dietary pattern that most Americans eat. And so what have you found to be helpful for you to maintain, years, that's pretty significant. I mean, there's people that have done this for many years and decades, but a lot of people don't make it to a year. What's allowed you to do that?
I think community, first and foremost. I used to be on Facebook. I'm not anymore, but when I was on Facebook, I did join a women's carnivore group and loved that group. I mean, all the women were great and they were supportive, and especially supportive of newcomers. And after a while, I got the opportunity to actually be a mentor for that carnivore group, and so I began mentoring other women. Uh, and it was just amazing to me to see how other women were looking for these answers. They were sick and really felt carnivore would do that for them. And me being able to help them and kind of give them advice after receiving advice myself from a friend really helped me to continue on, give me a sense of purpose, I guess, in continuing on with carnivore, because, there's always outside influences that try to influence you, unfortunately, in how you eat. People will say to you, why do you eat like that? Or come on, it's just a Klondike bar. You can have a Klondike bar, just once or whatever. And to have, and then especially the Revero community, coming into the Revero community, it's been awesome. I got the opportunity to join a lot of the Zoom calls in the last several months, and I've met several people now who are just awesome. And I think being in a community where you have other like-minded people really helps you stick to it.
Yeah, we've got some really great people in here. I'm very proud to be part of this community. I think, I laugh about the Klondike bar because I remember the old commercial, what would you do for a Klondike bar? And it's kind of like, you see this, people are just, what sort of health sacrifices are they willing to make to eat junk food? And it's pretty enormous in many cases. Yeah, some people are willing to forego their legs. I've seen that firsthand. I've actually amputated quite a few people's legs over the years. Because they refused to take care of their health, and part of it was diet. A lot of it was diet, quite honestly. As far as things you have learned along the way, I mean, we all kind of learn things about ourselves and about. Can you point to some things you might have learned that you didn't know 6 months ago?
To just keep listening to yourself. I mean, like I said, there's always going to be that person talking in your ear. And trying to tell you different things. And I was also recently, within the last 6 months, diagnosed with MBL, which is a form of leukemia, the beginning stages of leukemia. And when I found that out, I automatically always go into this mode of, okay, food can fix this. What can I do to fix what I'm doing now to try and stop this, cancer from growing and continuing on and reaching full stages of leukemia. And so I kind of went down that whole cancer rabbit hole and found that, cancers, live off of sugar and actually, in a way, protein, as far as like breaking it down and it turning into I can't think of it right now, the name of it. But anyway, I switched my carnivore thing from eating just when I was hungry and as much as I wanted until I was full to, okay, lowering my calories and upping my fat and lowering the amount of protein that I took in. And that seemed to just really drag down my energy and I wasn't feeling good. And And I just said to myself one day, and I started having a lot of health problems again, where I was getting dehydrated all the time, and my kidneys function seemed to be like not working. Like my electrolytes would be off all the time, and my CO2 and my uric acid would be high. And I was working with a hematologist, and he said, you're getting into stages of metabolic acidosis, and you need to be putting in more fruits and vegetables and to get the alkalinity in your body. And so I did try to add back in fruits and vegetables several months ago, and it didn't work for me. I seemed to just get worse. And so then I said to myself, okay, it's time to quit this. You need to just listen to your body. Don't worry about the leukemia. It's slow growing. And, maybe in a year or two, just doing carnivore, maybe that will heal things. So I'm back to doing just, eating when I'm hungry, eating just meat, as much meat as I want, and whatever kinds of meat I want. And I'm slowly getting back to normal. My kidney function's getting better, and my electrolytes are stabilizing, and my uric acid is going down.
Yeah, interesting. Particularly regarding the uric acid, because a lot of people will say that, hey, it's meat's going to drive your uric acid level up. I've checked mine multiple. I've got a home monitor at home, which is kind of interesting. I've checked mine quite a few times. It's always been normal, and I eat a lot of meat. I eat, sometimes 3-4 pounds a day of the stuff, and it doesn't seem to negatively impact in that regard. And there's a lot of nuance around uric acid that's kind of beyond this, what we want to talk about today. But as far as because you raised this point about listening to yourself and listening to your body, and I think in many cases that's good advice. I think a lot of us get in trouble when we listen to other people. There's somebody, I think, very poignantly pointed out that they went vegan because they listened to everybody else, but they stopped being vegan when they listened to themselves. And I think there's a point where there's some degree of self-delusion when you're sick and you just keep ignoring it, and you just want to just sort of we see this where people just ignore everything around them, all the obvious things. But I mean, when you objectively can look in the mirror and you can get all these sort of positive things, then that makes sense. Like I said, there's a significant difference between ignoring the negative things that are around you and then actually, just actually objectively assessing what's going on with your body and what's going on with your health. And so I think it's kudos to you for doing that, because things could have turned out much worse, and you seem to be in a good place right now. How much, just you mentioned eating when you're hungry, and then you just think about it. That seems to make the most sense of anything. It's like, well, why do I eat? Why am I hungry? And again, this comes to, if I'm eating a diet of processed food, I'm always hungry, and then there's a problem there. We see some people that have ruined themselves by adopting that philosophy. But I think when we're eating a kind of a whole food natural diet, that seems to work pretty well. How much do you eat on a day? Maybe you don't track, but I mean, just to get a sense of perspective, you said you've lost weight, you're maintaining weight. What does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
After a while, I started not being very hungry in the morning when I would get up, which was a huge difference from my early 20s. I had fasting hypoglycemia to the point where, like, I would just wake up in the morning drenched in sweat and have to eat as soon as I would get out of bed. And I don't have that anymore. I wake up normal and not really hungry. I get ready for work usually and drop my kids off at daycare and head to work. And I'm at work for, a couple hours, and maybe like around 11 or so, I'll get hungry. And, a typical lunch for me looks like, sometimes I'll just buy stew meat and fry that up in the skillet and have that. Sometimes I'll do just ground hamburger. Sometimes I'll take leftover steak or leftover, pork belly, whatever I've got for leftovers usually is my lunch. And then dinners would usually be like another steak. I like, Some people like certain cuts of steak. I am not picky because I did grow up poor and my mom would just get us, whatever kinds of steak she could afford. So, my husband, he thinks sirloin is bottom of the barrel as far as steak goes, but I'll eat a sirloin any day. My favorite cut, though, I would say would probably be a porterhouse. I like to have that New York with the filet on there. That's really good. And then, I do kind of experiment a little with things. I do make a soup that my kids love I just call it hamburger soup, and it's just ground hamburger with cheese. And I buy some cream cheese that doesn't have any fillers in it, Nancy's cream cheese, heavy cream and a little bit of seasonings, and the kids love that. I also have a chicken soup that I make that's similar to the hamburger soup, but with chicken and a little more like taco type seasoning. So it's more like a little fiesta soup. We also like to do things like cheese roll-ups, where I found some cheese wraps that don't have a whole lot of things in them. So that's pretty much, all I eat. Whatever I feel like eating is what I'll make that day.
Yeah. And so you said you're coming up on a year. Have you found it to be sustainable? Have you been able to maintain some weight loss on this? Is it something you've been able to do over the time?
Yes. So I have been able to maintain my weight loss. The scale doesn't always budge, but I don't keep track of just my scale. If my pants are starting to feel a bit loose, but I'm still at the same weight, to me, that says I'm still doing a good job because my pants are getting looser. Maybe I'm just putting on more muscle at the same time, and that's why my scale isn't moving. So yes, I'm still seeing, strides every week as far as me being able to go down clothes sizes and things like that.
I think I can't remember if I ever heard you say this or not. Did you say you started to add a little resistance training in there? Were you doing some strength training as well?
I was doing, yes, I like yoga, so I do yoga, and I recently started doing kettlebell workouts. I'm just not the type of person that likes to go to a gym all the time. I was working with a personal trainer for a while there, shortly after I started carnivore, like right before that kidney stone got me. But now it's mostly yoga and walking, and I'm starting out the kettlebell workouts.
Yeah, well, good for you. That's good to hear. What other sort of information would you like to share here, as far as just things you want to share for other people, perhaps?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the whole listening to yourself. Like, if you know something is good for you and your body's saying yes, you want to eat a steak today, and no, you don't want to have fruits and vegetables today. It's all about listening to yourself. And I know a lot of people think, probably not in this group because obviously we're all carnivores here, but anyone who's new and has doubts, I've seen so many people overcome, not just myself, but friends, health wise, doing carnivore. I think it really works. I'm a huge proponent of being what nature meant us to be. Nature didn't, I don't think, necessarily meant for us, to be driving around cars and watching computers and TV all day. It happened, but I don't think that's what nature meant for us. And I like to help people try to get back to nature and what I think nature meant for us. And that includes food too, because I don't think nature meant for us to be eating little Debbie snack cakes and Klondike bars.
Yeah, that's true. We can debate, and a lot of people will debate what we ate as a species, since we've been on the face of the earth, however long that may have been. And clearly it wasn't Klondike bars, and it wasn't, most of the stuff you find in the supermarket today, for sure. Nicole, is there a place people can find you? Do you have a social media account or anything like that, or do you bother with that stuff?
I do have Instagram. They can find me on Instagram. I do have a kind of like a coaching profile for myself on Instagram called Rising Primal. And they can also find me on Revero. I do have my coaching website set up on there. So if anyone needs help, I am available.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I wish you continued luck. I just look forward to seeing how, the year goes, and then another year after that, hopefully, and continued success. Thank you for sharing your story. The rest of you guys, thanks for being here. I've got a date with a couple of steaks I've got to go attend to. So we'll see everybody tomorrow. You guys take care. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.